and a sub-series that we like to do where we talk for 30 minutes about sustainable issues and projects and events in Japan which have been on our radar. I am JJ Walsh here in Hiroshima, and
Hi, I'm Tove and I'm in Yokohama.
it's great to do this again. We just squeaked in to make it for the May talk this time. We've
Last
both
day
been
of
pretty
May. How did we
busy.
get there already?
Yeah, but it's rainy season now. It's getting a little bit cooler. But yeah, the rain is certainly a change. Has it been really rainy there?
The last few days on and off, yes, and it looks like the whole week ahead is rain. So the garden's enjoying it. The rest of us,
Yeah.
not so much.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, everybody needs water. We need lots of
Yeah.
water, so it's a good thing. Recently, I we had the big G7 here. That was one of the big topics in Hiroshima. And it was nice to see that there was a local brand of tea maker
Oh,
called Tea Factory Gen. And I've known about him. I visited his tea plantation. He took over an abandoned tea field in Seta. And he has a tiny little abandoned house, which he made into the tiniest tea shop you've ever seen in Onomichi. And I'm writing an article for All About Japan right now about the sustainability of Onomichi and how exciting it is to go there. And so I got to visit his shop, and then he told me about the crowdfunding. And it's exciting because he's taking down the walls, trying to keep as
mm,
much of the old things as possible from this old house. And he's actually taking out the old plaster of the walls, mixing it with the wasted tea leaves after you make tea, and putting it back into the walls. So there's
fantastic.
so many beautiful elements of tea all around the whole remodeled cafe. It's got a beautiful view over the
Mhm.
harbor and more space than the place he is at now. But it was so exciting to see that his tea was chosen to be served at the G7. So
Brilliant.
that was so
Yeah,
nice to
yeah.
see that we have this huge international local event, international event, and a very sustainable local business was featured as
Brilliant.
its
Mhm.
high quality sustainable brand. And that was so encouraging to see. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Now you had a launch event for your sub brand. Tell us about that.
Yes, finally. So this has been we did a sort of soft launch originally 6 months ago now, but we finally had the official launch event last week at the Conrad in Tokyo, who we worked with at the beginning of the year on their sustainability strategy rollout. So they were our partners for this. And it was brilliant. We had sort of 50 leaders from all kinds of organizations, from big corporates to sort of SMEs to academia, MPOs, all come together. And we were looking particularly at who are your stakeholders? So we had group discussion. You can see the table discussions going on there, all sort of mixed groups, and asking people to identify who are your sustainability stakeholders. Um, and it was really interesting to see the output of that. And I've got an article. Well, we're just writing an article at the moment, just finalizing, which we'll be sharing on LinkedIn and so on in a few days. But it was really we sort of created a mind map of all the different stakeholders that people were talking about, and it was just incredible to see how complex that mind map is and how big it is, right? So once you start thinking, okay, first of all, is inside your organization, and yes, you might have your sustainability team or whoever's responsible for that, but then who are all the different stakeholder groups inside your organization who you really need to be getting on board in order for your strategy to actually be successful. But then there's all the stakeholders beyond that. There's the employees' families who are part of this conversation as well. They're thinking about their kids' futures, or the impact they're making at home as well with their daily lives, or their commute coming in if they're back to in person now in the office. And then you've got all the partners, the suppliers, the consumers, the customers. It was huge, and it was really enlightening to see that mapped out. And then we had a panel discussion with Nico Mira, who's head of sustainability for Volvo Car Japan, and Mari Kogiso, who is the CEO, co-CEO of SDG Impact Japan, which looks at investing in sustainable sort of startups and so on. And so it was really great to hear their stories about how they were engaging with different stakeholder groups and what, where they were finding the pushback, and where they were also finding the connections, and how were they connecting with different stakeholder groups to really get people sort of on board with what they wanted to do. So it was a really great discussion.
I wish I could have been there. Just a little bit
Yes.
too far to pop over.
Little bit far.
But I did get down to Fukuoka. I actually, Hiroshima was closed up during
Right.
the G7.
Mhm.
And I went down to Fukuoka to join my friend's group who does beach cleanups down there, Fukuoka for Sustainability. They're doing such great work. And I've been doing beach cleanups in Hiroshima for ages. So it was great to have that opportunity to go down and join their big group and talk to them. And also, unfortunately, to see that the Hiroshima oyster plastics are there as well. So I'm showing on my screen, this is from my campaign page that I started last month. I really wanted to launch this during the G7 and kind of raise awareness of a big issue for environmental problems that we're having with ocean plastics from the oyster industry in Hiroshima. So the petition is going really well. And thanks for sharing it, Tova. I noticed that you did. And we've got almost 3,000 signatures right now. All the information is in English and Japanese. And through doing this campaign, it led me to do that cleanup with the Fukuoka group. I went to IKEA, which was the first time I've been to IKEA in Japan. And I was just blown away by how much this company is showing sustainability in action. And so I ended up eating there every day. I was there for 3 days because they are now having a plant-based festival, and they have so many plant-based options on the menu. And I wanted to try them all because it's so difficult to find plant-based options in Japan. And so my friend was like, "What? You're eating at IKEA again?" And I was like, "Yes, I want to try it out." But we have Costco here, right? And if you compare it to like food courts for big chains like Costco is so much single-use plastic and so much single-use waste. It's kind of like eating in a fast food place. IKEA is like a nice cafe. Everything's reusable, refillable, plant-based options. I was just so impressed by the food court. And then you go into the toilets and you're like, oh, the water, maybe someone didn't flush. And then you read, it's all rainwater. They're using rainwater in the toilets. And they have this idea to have carbon neutral, sustainable energy by 2030, reusing all their old products. I was like, what the heck? How can a company like this be in Japan and not be showing other big businesses in Japan, this is how you do it. This is how you reduce your costs, you raise your sustainability. So I was just, my socks were blown off. Every part that I saw of IKEA was just so impressed. Now, Tova, you've worked with IKEA in Japan before, right?
Yeah, well, we had an event on DEI, sort of women in management, actually, last November. And Yuriko Iwasaki, who was at the time the country head of communications for IKEA Japan, was one of our speakers, and she was so eloquent, and she was the only person on the panel whose organization had actually achieved gender parity in in their management right up through the levels. And so we were asking her, well, how has IKEA done this? And she said it's really all about living the values, really living the values. And that's for every aspect of sustainability, whether it's, the use of, plastics, or the energy they're using, or, the equality in the workplace as well. She said that the values, that for IKEA, they're not just something that which is on the website or, sort of part of the onboarding and then nobody really thinks about them after that. She said those are lived every day and they're part of conversations every day. They're part of, evaluation conversations. They're part of, sort of management meetings and so on. So they're really lived. And I think because of that, everybody properly understands them, and is aligned with them, and then they understand how that needs to be put into action, right? They're not just some sort of abstract concept that people don't really know what to do with. They're very clear about, this is, a value that we have, and here's how it, actually happens in the workplace. Here's how it's part of the designs that we make. Here's how it's part of, the processes and, how we're interacting with our suppliers, how we're interacting with our customers, and so on. So
Yeah.
it's
And
really very
using
deeply embedded.
those third-party certifications like
Yes.
FSC for sustainable wood.
Yeah.
In the food court, it wasn't only plant-based foods that they had.
Yeah.
They also had seafood, but of course, it was certified sustainable seafood. You
Mhm.
don't see that in Japan, not yet, right?
Not so much,
And,
not so much. Mhm.
WWF certification. And then, like you said, empowering women. I saw women in leadership positions all over
Mhm.
at work in management. And it was
Yeah.
just, you don't see this enough in Japan. So
Mhm.
it really was. It was
Yeah.
very impressive. I was glad I had the chance to go. I'm going to go back. I was even thinking, wow, this is another reason to move to Fukuoka.
Yeah.
Seriously, like we don't have any big companies like this in Hiroshima where I can just go and feel like I'm shopping somewhere that's very sustainably led, you know?
Yeah. I mean, yes. I mean, it's interesting. Is at the end of the day, you can be skeptical and say, well, their whole business is still selling things, and they want people to buy more.
Yeah.
But but they are trying really hard to think in a more circular way and design things so that they can be, the materials can be properly recycled and reused, and they're creating the infrastructure for that as well. So they will take back your old furniture and things like this, so that it
Yeah.
doesn't just go into landfill.
That
Um,
and
yeah.
they have a second hand, like seconds part in
Yes.
their store. So
Yeah.
things that didn't sell or people
Mhm.
return them for whatever reason, you can buy
Yeah.
it at a discount. They have a
Mhm.
repair station you can fix.
Yeah.
You can return things you're not happy with. I mean,
Mm.
these are things that are not common
No.
in Japanese stores that really, like you see in Patagonia, for
Mm.
example, a repair space. These are concepts that definitely could be applied more widely.
Absolutely. I mean, it's something that used to be part of every community, right? It used to be part of of course, Japanese sort of business and culture as well. But I think, like so many places, and like we see in, a lot of, well, pretty much anywhere in the world as well. It's not just here. Um, we've lost this whole drive for convenience and wanting new things. We've kind of, it's easier just to throw it away and get a new one, and not think about where it goes afterwards, or the impact of that. So it's great to see companies like IKEA, like Patagonia, sort of set revitalizing that mindset of saying, well, we don't have to throw it away, it can be repaired, it can be reused.
And
um
then back
yeah.
to the campaign that I'm trying to raise awareness,
Mm.
but also we're not saying that the oyster industry is bad. We know it employs a lot of people.
Yep.
We know oysters is a great protein, that
Hmm.
actually oysters really help clean the water. There's so many wonderful things about the oyster industry. We're just
Hmm.
asking for them to make targets.
Yeah.
Right? Like when you walk into IKEA, you walk into Patagonia, you see their targets very clearly. They say
Hmm.
by 2030 we want to be, carbon neutral.
Yeah.
By 2025 we want to have organic cotton only. Those kinds of things are
Yeah.
important to
Yeah.
say clearly to the customer and the user, this is how you can trust us that
Yeah.
we are working towards something, right?
Yes. And I think sort of adding on to that, I think, yes, it's really important to share those targets, but also to share how you are doing that and to show concrete examples, because any company at the moment, you look at the website, the targets there, they're talking about them. And this is something we discussed at the Enteleco launch as well, that sort of words to gap action and how that impacts trust with people in your own organization, but also your consumers, your clients. Because it's all very well to say, yes, we want to be carbon neutral, gender equality is important, da, da, da. But if that's not what you're seeing and there's no very solid roadmap under that with this is how we are going to achieve that. And here are the milestones along the way. And here's how we're doing so far, showing that you're properly tracking that, you're measuring it, you're making progress towards those goals. If you don't have that, then, very quickly you'll start to lose the trust.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we can take some positive examples from the Japanese government, to be
Yep.
honest, because
Mhm.
they have very clear 2030, 2050 goals. And if you checked their official websites and checked by third parties, you see how they're actually a little bit ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
And those
Mhm.
are important things. You have to have the target, you have to show how you're doing it,
Yeah.
and your progress along the way. These are all
Absolutely.
parts of sustainable business, right?
Very much so. Very much. Yep.
Yeah, awesome. So doing this campaign, going to Fukuoka, unfortunately, on the beaches in Fukuoka, we saw so much fishing industry plastics,
Mhm.
which is just clogging the beaches. And unfortunately, we did find some Hiroshima oyster plastics, probably Hiroshima, because Hiroshima is the biggest oyster producer in all of Japan. So it's just doing the cleanup. Of course, we can't clean up everything. It's
Yeah.
impossible, but it really raises awareness about the issues and what's actually on the beaches. What is actually
Mm.
happening? Where does this come from? Like
Yeah.
just that's a part of the research strategy, right?
Mhm.
And when we went out to the beach, there were hundreds of other volunteers. A big Japanese nonprofit was there at the same beach that morning. And so it was really great to be a part of such a big effort. And of
Mhm.
course, all those families that joined, they have a better awareness
Yeah.
of the overall problem
Mhm.
and think about, oh, what could we do at home in our lives? And that's so valuable, right?
Yeah, yeah, very much. I mean, that awareness building is a massive part of it. I mean, yes, that the beach cleans. Yes, you're taking the actual plastic off, so you're physically improving the environment. But I think the awareness is the huge sort of win there, right? So making people stop and think, well, they're picking up a piece of plastic. I maybe I used this kind of thing, this item, and what happened to it when I threw it away? Was it actually recycled, or where did it go? And did I need to buy it? So, sort of creating the opportunity for that awareness and then for people to go back into their own sort of networks and have the conversations as well, sort of builds a positive momentum there. So
Yeah.
really important.
And doing that cleanup and doing the oyster petition for Hiroshima, it led me to read articles about plastic free oyster growing around the world.
Hmm.
And I came across this Long Cove Sea Farm, and this is run by Abigail Barrows. And she is a microplastic scientist who has studied microplastic problems around the world. And then she had the chance to take over an oyster farm in Maine in the US, and she's showing how you can do it more sustainably. You can do
Brilliant.
it with solar
Mhm.
power to help clean the oysters. You can do it with reusable baskets. So it's just great to have the chance to connect then with someone doing it, like someone
Yeah.
trying to do it more sustainably. And when I reached out to her, she said she's coming to Hiroshima this
Oh,
year. So
perfect.
I don't know if they're studying the oyster plastics in Hiroshima, but I'm gonna be able to meet up with her and hopefully interview her for my show. So that's very exciting.
Brilliant. Oh, that's great to hear. I look forward to listening to that.
Yeah. Now you were talking a little bit about bioplastics.
Yeah, so bioplastics, I mean, talking of plastics, they're not all bad, and we do need a lot of plastics, right? They're really useful materials, particularly in certain industries. Plastics are really important, maybe in food, in packaging of food to keep it safe and clean, and in the medical industry as well. So bioplastics are sort of obviously one option that we are looking at globally, and there needs to be more work done. So this was an interesting article I came across about some research going on in Japan, and a team there looking at cellulose. So sort of using the structural part from plants to create bioplastics, and to use them in cars. So there's an sort of example given there where a car at a Tokyo Motor Show, the plastics in the interior, and if you think about the average car and how much plastic is used inside that, right, there's a lot. And the plastics inside were made with this bioplastic derived from cellulose nanofibers, which was, really interesting. It's incredibly strong and very, very light. So it's actually a benefit in that, it makes the car lighter, which requires less power to move it. So you've got, benefits there as well. And of course, it's biodegradable at the end as well. Now, bioplastics is not just a simple quick fix solution. They're complex. There are a lot of different bioplastics. We're seeing at the moment some products which are mixed bioplastic and petrochemical plastic, which is not helpful because that can't be separated then and broken down at the end. So that's something to be wary of. And also, they're not all as easily biodegradable as we'd like to think. They need certain conditions in order to degrade and so on. But I think that, the important thing is that there's more and more research going on into this, which, is obviously a positive thing. And as that ramps up, hopefully we'll see more and more examples, and we'll understand better how to work with it, how to degrade it, how to dispose of it at the end. And the great thing is that however long it takes to degrade is not releasing toxins into the earth or the water. So it's something I am excited to see and to follow, and would love to see more of there.
Yeah. And keep testing and keep discussing and keep brainstorming and keep analyzing, right?
Yeah,
Like some of the bioplastics have been tested in the environment and they don't break down the way they do in the lab.
exactly.
Those kinds of things are really important to
Yeah,
test too. To think about the end stage, like, of course, sourcing from reusable plastic material instead of going to landfill. That's a great thing. But what
yeah,
happens at the end of life, right? Thinking of everything's circularity,
yeah.
always important. But yeah,
Mhm.
these are discussions we need to be having, right?
Yes. Yeah. So if anyone has examples, good examples, then please do share. Let us know. I know one of the convenience stores, I'm not sure whether it's Family Mart or 7-Eleven, is using bioplastics now to wrap their onigiri, the rice balls, and is using also plant-based ink to print onto the labels there. So we are starting to see some real examples of these out in the sort of everyday world. So that's great. We want to see more of that. But like you say, there also needs to be more understanding of how do these things need to be handled then at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you just had an event for diversity and inclusion. You want to talk about this?
Yeah, so this, I mentioned earlier, we had an event last November. So this was the follow-up to that. So looking at driving DEI in management, as it said, and we focused really this time on looking at success stories. And we had, as you can see there, 4 brilliant speakers from Novo Nordisk, from Olympus, from Maersk. Carrie Park was our moderator last time and again this time. And also Shigefumi Yamaura from H&M as well, talking about what he's seen as a man around him in an organization that's doing very well on gender equality. So it was wonderful to hear those stories from them. And what we worked on in that was identifying the key success factors. What enabled them to get to where they were. What was it? Sort of, we were looking inside, what was going on, through their minds as they were doing this, what enabled them to have the confidence to step into these roles or to put their hand up for them. And then what was happening also around them in the organizational culture that enabled, or in their lives outside, whether that was family or community that was enabling them as well. And then we went to a group discussion. We had about 80 people in the end from academia, from all kinds of businesses, a mix of male and female, mix of Japanese, non-Japanese. It was really great energy. And we were looking at, okay, so having identified these key success factors, what are the actions then we can take to, ensure that we actually, leverage these and build on them and enable them to happen. So that was a really good discussion. And again, we've got the report coming out hopefully next week. We're just working on that now, which we'll share broadly because we want people to be able to take away these learnings and use them in their own organizations. And the idea is also we're going to come back together in 6 months and look at, from the learnings and the conversations we had there, what have the people who attended been doing, what has worked, what has not, why hasn't it worked, for example, what needs to be changed. So we continue this dialogue and this learning process together. So it was really very encouraging to see so many brilliant examples of women leaders in Japan, like you were saying earlier, working in Japanese companies as well, not just the gaishike, the foreign companies. So wonderful to see the role models there, because that was one of the key success factors that we talked about, sort of actually seeing people who've made it, and they're not just sort of on the news and in an article. It's not the same people all the time. It's like these are the real women who have managed to overcome whatever obstacles there are. Great examples, and they're now sharing their stories and inspiring others.
That's awesome. And that's so wonderful to hear. Like, I've got this article coming up about Onomichi. So many of the women doing amazing entrepreneur activities there. They were originally from Onomichi. They studied abroad. They went to other big cities and they came back.
Yeah.
And to me, that's like, yes, that is the sign of success for this area, being able to do that, to bring back talent to this small area. I think that's really encouraging. Now, I think one of the recent talks that I had on my show with this amazing craftsperson, Douglas Brooks. Now, he's been studying most of his career about making wooden Japanese boats. He's been an apprentice for many traditional craftspeople, and sometimes the only apprentice that they have before they die or they retire. So he's documenting, writing books, doing videos, and then doing workshops in Japan and in America to pass on these traditional ways, which have often been secret for so long in Japan. But that's not sustainable. We need to keep it going. But yeah, it was really wonderful talking with him. So many great insights about preservation of culture and tradition, and of course, building with wood and carpentry, which is so much connection to sustainability, right?
Yeah, no, that's wonderful to hear that that's being kept
Now,
alive.
you've got a event coming up for REI. Do you want to mention?
Yes. So, as you say, it's the last day of May today. June starts tomorrow, and the 20th of June is World Refugee Day. And so Refugee Empowerment International, REI, has got a couple of events coming up around that. So you can see the Being a Refugee on the 24th at Alishan Park Cafe in Yoyogi, central Tokyo. So it's sort of a whole experience there of understanding a little bit more about, what are refugees going through? How do they find the resilience to get through that, and sort of sharing stories and getting a deeper understanding there. And then on the 29th in the evening, we've got the Great Wine Bluff, which is a wonderful event where people are competing in teams and try to guess, what they know about the wine and so on. It's a really, really good fun event. So, if people are free on that evening and you happen to be in Tokyo, please go and sign up. If you don't have a team, you can sign up as an individual, and we'll put you in a team on the night. But all of the proceeds from these events will go to supporting the projects that REI supports around the world, which make a real impact on people who really need it and want to rebuild their lives. This is not about sort of giving a hand out. It's very much a hand up, and enabling people to take back their independence and dignity and rebuild.
That's awesome. Yeah, very important. I wish I could go. I wish I was a little bit closer. That sounds awesome. That sounds awesome. I did a live tour. I often do live tours around Hiroshima to an online audience, and I did a tour yesterday at Hiroshima MOCA, so Museum of Contemporary Art, and I was so impressed to see so many examples of sustainability and circularity. So, for example, here we have reused A-bombed stone from the center of town, which they incorporated into their design. And they did a beautiful renovation, which they just reopened again last month. They have this art installation here where they're showing how fresh fruit degrades and starts growing after composting naturally, and they're only giving it 3 months. I wish they gave this project a year because
Yes.
it's wonderful, but it takes a long time to see how
Mm.
Mother Nature works, right?
Yep. Yep.
But I love that idea. There was another example. This was a Hiroshima A-bomb survivor, this artist, and he made this art piece full of garbage from a landfill. And he
Hmm.
calls it okonomiyaki, which is the Hiroshima famous dish, which means as you like. And so he's asking the question, is this as we like? Is this
Oh,
the
wow.
legacy that we want for the future from Hiroshima? So it was really powerful to see
That
that.
is
There's
a
so
really
many
powerful question.
wonderful examples
Mm.
of how art can really illuminate
Yeah.
important ideas for society and
Mhm.
environment and culture, right?
Very much so. And that's such a deep question, and art is such a great way to start those conversations, right, and open up.
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. So that's our time. Did you have anything else that you wanted to mention? Did we cover
I
everything?
save it to next time. Yeah,
All right,
there's always more.
wonderful. Thank you so much, Tova. Thanks everyone for
Thank
joining,
you.
and see you again in June.
Brilliant. Looking forward to it.